Today's story didn't start as revenge. There was no plan, no declaration, no moment where she decided to strike back. It started in a crowded weekend market, with a teenage girl crying on the phone because a group of adult women had decided she was fair game for public judgment. And by the time it was over, the story being told about her family inside a church community didn't look anything like the truth anymore. Not because she shouted louder, but because she didn't. She just changed what people were looking at. This was already a complicated situation long before that day. Her ex-husband had passed away the year before, leaving behind unresolved legal and emotional fallout. His parents, her daughter's grandparents, were still deeply involved in the aftermath, and not in a way that was supportive. There were ongoing custody disputes, tension over access, and a growing belief on their side that they were entitled to define what family should look like going forward. But there was another layer to it, a church community that already played a strong role in their lives. And within that space, perception mattered almost as much as reality. So, as disagreements continued at home, a second version of events began forming elsewhere, quieter at first, and then steadily more influential. A version where blame was being clearly assigned, and where she and her daughters were cast in a very specific light. The incident that shifted everything happened at a local weekend market. Her youngest daughter was there for something simple, an outing tied loosely to a birthday celebration. Nothing unusual, nothing public-facing, until she was suddenly approached and cornered by a group of older women who were connected to the church circle that her grandparents were involved in. And it wasn't a conversation. It was an interrogation dressed up as moral concern. Questions about family loyalty, about behaviour, about whether she was fulfilling what others believed was her role in a complicated, extended family situation. And it's not just about the emotional weight of these questions. It's the setting. It was public, intentional, and designed in a way that made disengaging difficult without looking like guilt. When the mother arrived, the situation escalated quickly, not into clarity, but into noise. There were accusations about character, about obedience, about faith, words that carried religious framing but functioned more like pressure. Eventually, the situation became disruptive enough that staff at the market asked everyone involved to leave, which ended the confrontation physically, but not socially, because what had just happened wasn't the end of it. It followed them home. Later that night, she reached out privately to someone still within the same church community, not to escalate things, but to understand what was being said about her family. And that conversation revealed something important. A detailed narrative was already circulating inside the church's online group. Her ex-mother-in-law had posted a long account framing herself as wronged, portraying the daughters and their mother as ungrateful, financially supportive in ways that implied entitlement, and emotionally responsible for fractured family relationships. It was persuasive in the way emotionally charged stories often are, and it was spreading. But there was a problem with the version being shared. The community in question held very strong views on certain moral issues, especially infidelity. And the greater community didn't know that she had been mid-divorce with her husband when he passed away. So the story that had been carefully reshaped to avoid exposing uncomfortable truths while still assigning blame elsewhere, that left gaps, inconsistencies, places where the narrative didn't fully hold. And once those gaps were seen, they can't be unseen. The following day, she gathered documentation that had been accumulated over time. Messages and screenshots, emails and records tied to the breakdown of their marriage due to his infidelity and the surrounding family conflict. Not selectively, not edited for emotional effect, just arranged into clear, undeniable timeline. And then she presented it in a way that mirrored the environment she was stepping into. Structured and quiet, almost ceremonial in appearance. Nothing was announced. It was simply placed where it would naturally circulate within the community space. So now everyone knew how her husband and mother-in-law had acted towards her and her children, all the messy details quietly exposed. And from there, the reaction unfolded gradually. Confusion at first, and then private conversations, and then public reconsideration. The version of events that had been widely accepted didn't collapse instantly, but it stopped being stable. Different people responded differently. Some defended the original narrative, some withdrew. But the centre of gravity had shifted. The family members who had been most publicly shaping the story found themselves under the same scrutiny they had helped direct towards her. And within that same community structure, that mattered. Eventually, they were no longer positioned comfortably within the church environment, and they left its centre of influence. There was no public statement from her, no final word, only a quiet withdrawal from engagement with a system that had already decided who she was before hearing her side. And that leaves something difficult to sit with. When a story about someone is already circulating in a community, especially one tied to morality and identity, does truth matter most when it's spoken or when it's finally seen? And at what point does correcting a narrative stop being about conflict and start being necessary? That was sweet revenge. It always comes back around.